It really subtracted from the value.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
Recording. It was terrible.
That makes sense.
Cool.
Awesome.
So, but yeah, I guess we could sit down.
However you want to do it, it's down. You can look at stuff.
Sure, yeah. If you
Sure.
want to show us around, I mean, I guess to set the scene a little bit,
Okay.
we're in your studio. There's a lot of natural light coming in,
Yeah.
beautiful drawings everywhere, photographs, mirrors. It's a beautiful place.
I do a lot of photography, mostly kind of in this half of the studio.
Yeah.
And who's back there if either of you.
Great.
So I got work kind of all over because I got some artist books I'm working on. Usually this is sort of empty for shooting, but I hung up some recent drawings. These are all, actually those are very recent, a week.
Do you draw from your photographs?
No, I draw from models.
Oh.
And I use models in the photographs, and then draw from models right up here.
I see. How do you find your models? Are they friends of yours?
Generally, or people that have been referred to me, or people that have contacted me. I don't have to look very hard. I chat with people online, and people appear.
People love to do it, right?
A lot of people love to do it.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Some people will say that it's kind of liberating for them.
Yeah.
Or they just don't have an opportunity to be themselves in a safe space. So that's really wonderful.
What did you get into first? Visual art and drawing, or like the visual, like photography?
That's really almost an impossible question.
Interesting.
To give it a shot.
Oh.
When I was a child, I took pictures and I drew. I mean, I probably drew before I ever had a camera, so I guess drawing would be the answer.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how young I was when I got a camera. And of course, when I was drawing and photographing as a kid, I didn't think about making art. And drawing was probably closer to making art than photography that I was doing. But, through into college, into art school, I did a lot more drawing and I did a lot more printmaking.
Oh, that's fun.
There's a print over there. That's 10 years old, maybe it's more 15 years old. I wonder if there's a date on it. And I was kind of doing work like that before I kind of switched to... But I was doing a lot of abstract printmaking. I taught a lot of printmaking, and photography was kind of a side project. And I was doing a lot of Polaroid 20 by 24 work.
Oh, wow.
And that's why, like
Those are Polaroid prints?
that's a Polaroid print.
How exactly does that work with gigantic Polaroid prints like that? I thought they were usually just very small.
There's a handful of really big cameras.
Wow.
This was taken at Mass Art. I don't know if there's still a camera there because film is
Pricey. Or rare?
Rare. I mean, it's pricey, yeah, but finding it is more of a problem. Yeah. So I was kind of, got the opportunity to do some projects there. And that's when I kind of started using models, obviously not in this one, but started using models, and then I was like, well, how do I do this when I'm not doing project? And it was also a time when kind of moving from film to digital is relatively new, 20-something years ago.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of getting my feet into just experimenting with photography. And then I had to move my studio from Melcher Street right around the corner to here. I had a much smaller studio. I had a printmaking studio. And I said, okay, I don't want to just replicate my old studio in a new place. It's like, okay, it's time to get a new studio. Hopefully this is permanent.
Yeah.
And what can I do? I just have a space. What will happen? And that's when the photography really took over. And then a few years later, I was doing a residency in Vermont Studio Center, and they had a model posing for drawing, once a day. It's down if you want.
Oh, sure.
Why not?
And
I'll take this couch because I have a busted tailbone.
Sure. And so I thought, well, and there was all these studios, but But where the model was like 2 studios away from us. I said, well, I've got to check this out, just out of curiosity. I used to draw from the model all the time. I teach figure drawing. Let's try this again, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And so I was working in the drawing studio a lot. And when I came back to Boston, I guess it was quite a bit later, someone contacted me about a private drawing group that they were putting together, that was already together. It was like, yeah, I'll do that.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the drawing kind of took off from there, and then I started questioning, what is it to draw a model? What are the conventions? Why is the model chaste when we draw a model in a classroom or a private group? You know, they're completely naked, but we don't talk about, in all my years of teaching figure drawing, we rarely talked about nudity.
Yeah.
We did, but it's not really a subject for figure drawing. So it's like I wanted to break conventions more. And so I really kind of started needing to hire my own models and work to get people to model for me, so I could kind of play with the conventions, the expectations, sexuality, desire, and vulnerability, which are kind of the core themes of kind of all the work that I do.
You mentioned on your website and what you were just saying that like teaching is a huge part of your background and your experience and stuff in colleges, right? I'm curious to know, like, teaching figure drawing, and like you said, like the model is usually chaste or kind of statuesque almost. How was that transition for you as an artist and a professor, kind of going into art that was more focused on sexuality and vulnerability, while like your professional life is probably constantly, like, I don't know, maybe kind of uptight, right, at schools and stuff? Not at all.
No.
Or was it?
I don't think that there's a lot of uptightness in schools.
Right, that's what I meant. Yeah,
I don't
for sure.
think that. I mean, there's always a question for me: how do I bring this stuff into my teaching? And my process of teaching figure drawing, and that's not all I taught, but was more of how do you interpret the model rather than how do you report on the model.
Yeah.
And what is observational drawing if not looking inside as well as looking at, the model. You have to observe what's kind of inside and what do you want to say and what does the model mean to you and what does that pose look like to you? What is it reference or a metaphor? So, and so we would talk about all kinds of things in my classes. One of the last classes that I taught on Zoom, because it was the last full year that I taught at Tufts was on Zoom.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to teach figure drawing on Zoom. I thought
That sounds tough.
People do, and I've drawn from the figure on Zoom. It's kind of a novelty when I do that. It's not something I really.
Yeah.
Well, I do enjoy it, but it's not like it's just another. It's just kind of interesting.
Might as well be drawn from a photo, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a little bit more than that because you can maybe talk to the person, but more than you can talk to a photo. But so I taught one of the classes I was teaching was a mixed media drawing class. No models for that class, and the other one was figure class. I'm not teaching figure online. That's drawing from reference essentially.
Yeah.
And so I devised a class called Hot Topics, which was specifically dealing with, COVID crisis. Trump was president.
Yeah.
The social issues, Black Lives Matter, on and on. It was like kind of the perfect time for the class, even though I had wanted to teach a class in that vein years and years ago and never got off the ground.
Was this like the fall semester in 2020 then?
Fall and spring semester.
Okay.
Fall and winter, spring.
Yeah.
2020, I guess it was, yeah.
Right in the midst of everything then.
Yes, and it was like kind of the perfect time for the class. And I was kind of warned by the dean, you sure you want to teach this? The tightness? There's all kinds of ways you can get in trouble here. And it's like, well, okay, let me
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, so kind of being myself with students, with myself, with models is really very important. And how do you bring this stuff in as opposed to just teaching this technique? And I have taught techniques, but that's my primary focus of teaching has always been process and content and experience.
What was that like in terms of that like hot topics class? Like what kind of classwork did you do to kind of convey that message? Or explore that, I guess.
And I'm still sort of teaching on my own a version of that class.
Oh, okay.
But not through Tufts. What was it like? It was, I had my little uptight Zoom world turned upside down on me.
Oh.
And that I was like, do I really want to teach on? At first I had to. I mean,
Yeah.
we went from classroom to Zoom, and I really fumbled. And then the following summer and spring, I thought about, what is this? How can I make this work? And what really surprised me is it worked amazingly well. And the students, especially at that time, needed a community. Everyone was stuck by themselves or with roommates or a partner or kids or whatever, and people didn't have a place to talk about this stuff and make art about this stuff. So my standard kind of format for online classes is a slideshow of usually around a theme, but sometimes it's a very loose theme, that we do in silence. That we just look. It's not about this is this person, this is why you should like him.
Yeah.
This is this person, this is why you should like them. It's more like, what do you see in these images? And so we look at like 100 images in silence, and then we just talk about what came up for you. What did you see? What do you have questions about? And from there, that leads to a wide-ranging discussion or discussion about a specific topic. And in the Hot Topics class, we had studio time, like a quarter or a third of the class meetings, but usually they were all discussion of what they were working on as well. Sort of an answer to the uptight question, one of the students in the second semester of Hot Topics asked me about my work, and would you show us your work? And my work's online, it's easy to see it.
Yeah.
And depending on where you go, you can see more explicit things or less explicit things. And so we did this whole long conversation of how do you show not safe for work at work.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm working. I'm at Tufts.
Yeah.
How do I show work that I can't show? And so everyone needs to be kind of involved in wanting to see it.
Yeah.
Or not having the class required. And we spoke so much about this before I ever showed the work. It was really kind of amazing.
That is a really interesting thing to think about when you're working in like an academic arts setting, because those topics come up. You have to be able to discuss them or to look at imagery like that in a way that is appropriate, So it's a really kind of thorny subject, it seems like.
Well, the thorny part was I would show the work if it was somebody else's.
Yeah.
Like if that was your work, I could show it and say, this is her work and this is
Yeah.
what she's doing. But if it's my work, it's a different story. And you definitely know professors who have gotten in trouble showing their work and with nudity in it, or showing, this is a classic. And actually, it's certainly happened in other schools, even showing other people's work.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was my work was a completely different story.
Yeah.
I mean, if you showed, there's an easy example of explicit Mapplethorpe work. It's you could get in trouble, but it's a classic.
Yeah.
But if I show something explicit, it's their teacher. So we talked a lot about this in advance.
Yeah.
And about the topic, and it was great. No one. I said you don't have to come. No one. That's a pretty visible thing to do, would be not to come, too.
Yeah.
It'd be obvious, but everybody was really excited about it. Well, everybody was really interested. There were probably a few people that may not have been excited about it, but everybody was really interested.
That's great. It must have been nice too to have that conversation where everybody was involved in that dialogue beforehand too.
Yeah.
That must have been interesting from your perspective as the artist also to see those reactions.
Yeah. That was great.
Yeah.
That was great.
It's complicated. How do you, I guess, make of that? Like, how do you reckon with that kind of dance between wanting to inspire the students or your peers to be making these difficult things or discussing things that are hard to talk about, while being maybe in a setting where it's also kind of taboo to be making these things and to be showing art like this?
And for me, breaking taboos is part of art making, and part of teaching. Not that I'm in teaching trying to break taboos, but how do we talk about taboos? Why are things taboo? And why have these existed in art for centuries, but to talk about them is taboo? And that's happening, of course, more and more. And there are definitely things that I'm sure you can't do in art school, at least easily now, that at one time you wouldn't have thought about. And maybe you should have thought about it decades ago, but there was something about the freedom of being natural with what you're talking about and not having to mediate as much.
How was it when you were in school?
That's a great question, because I was in school a long time ago, and it was the first year I was in art school. Well, actually, it was probably, I went to NYU for 1 year and then went to SMFA Museum School, which is where I ended up teaching.
Big change.
Yeah, NYU was not for me. Even though I so wish I was. This is so embarrassing.
One of those kids.
I wish that I was on top of things and smart enough and mature enough to have known where I was. So this is going to age me completely, but I was living in Greenwich Village in 1972, 1973, and I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Soho was just starting. So many gay rights things was just starting right there. I wasn't out yet.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going on. And the teachers weren't saying, go to this gallery, it's right around the corner, and, there's brand new stuff happening there.
Yeah.
So any art I saw was either just completely casual or like a tourist would do. And so I only went there for a year, changed the museum school, came out all in the same time, essentially.
Yeah.
And, but no one was talking about issues in art. I mean, they were all visual issues and conceptual issues, and museum school wasn't that conceptually oriented, and I may not even know what conceptual art was. I certainly heard of it.
Yeah.
And so there was no real avenue that I saw to deal with what I'm dealing now, and I wish I was then. And there were kind of little specks where our windows would open, but I didn't see it, and I certainly didn't know of any artwork that was being made that had political themes. I can't say that completely, it's true, but certainly political themes around sexuality. And no one was really talking about political art for the most part. Color field painting was going on right then.
Yeah.
That was kind of a big deal. And I was always just assumed I was an abstract artist, even though I loved figure drawing. And I didn't know how to put all that stuff together. So art school was great. I loved it. But there's so much that didn't happen. Is it, who I was in my maturity at that point? It's like the classic kind of like example for myself is, we're familiar with Nan Goldin's Ballad of Sexual Dependency slideshows. I was putting together slideshows that I would show at my review boards. They weren't anything like what she was doing at all. They were nice pictures around my apartment and other people's apartments. But I was putting together these slideshows, and it's like once the lights went back on, we just talked about the work on the walls. And no one ever said, slideshows could be a medium.
Yeah.
And So it was always kind of like, do it on the side. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't like darkroom, so I always kept dropping out of photo classes. Because photo classes were all darkroom classes, and
Yeah.
they were about science and working in the dark, and I'm kind of a klutz enough, not doing something in the dark. So I just kept dropping out of photo classes and taking slides and making
Yeah.
slideshows and doing my abstract work in figure drawing. But I loved art school. There was a class, I think it was called Art and Culture, that did talk about some political things, but and that was a art history class rather than a studio class.
What do you think it was about the New York Academy or whatever?
NYU.
Oh yeah, all right. Yeah, what do you think it was about there that made you want to come to Boston? Are you from New York or?
I'm from this area.
Oh, I see. I
From
see.
north of Boston.
Oh, okay. So you, when it was time to go to college, you said, "All right, New York City, let's go."
I'd been going to school in Maine. I went to a private school in Maine for the last 2 years, which was amazing to me, which was wonderful. Good art program. And going to NYU, I felt like I took a step backwards in terms of the art classes.
Oh, wow.
Right. Was it like kind of abstract or non-academic almost, or?
They were very basic in some ways. I mean, it was like I had in high school I was doing a lot of woodcuts and linoleum cuts.
Oh, wow.
I really loved doing that.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to go on to etching, and I couldn't because I was my freshman.
Oh, yeah.
And you had to take these other and the instructor said, "This, you can take this class. Just don't worry about it." But it was structured so if you were a freshman, you did this. If you were a junior, you did this. And I felt like my work was pretty, it's kind of embarrassing in a way when I think about what I was doing. But I really didn't like what I was seeing around me. People didn't look like they had any ideas at all. I mean, this isn't for me. And I had a dream that said that. And the only really art school I knew was the museum school.
Yeah.
And so I applied there and shifted things around.
Yeah. It's interesting. We've talked to a few different people about their school experience that had been in art school around the same time you're describing. And something that we've been talking to people about is that it seems like there are trends of what kind of art colleges teach or lean towards. Like right now I feel like we're in an era where a lot of art schools are teaching more conceptual and political work, which is really cool, but then we have a lot of students also that complain that they don't feel like they have enough technical focus. And then there are a lot of people that were in school around the time that you were that were saying that they were pushed into abstraction when that wasn't necessarily where they were at. It's just interesting to think about that being sort of waves of the era that you happen to be in versus what your practice actually wants to be. Do you feel like that comes to fruition later on?
Practice wanted to be though.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I was pushed into abstraction. Abstraction seemed very exciting.
Okay, yeah.
And I didn't need figurative technical know-how to do it.
Yeah.
And so it just seemed natural
Yeah.
to work in abstraction. But I do think that, art schools are always a little bit, maybe this is all schools, are a little bit blind because, we all have our points of view and how we teach and our interests. And the museum school was very much less technical than other schools. You didn't have to take basic courses. You could, but you didn't have to. That was like kind of great for me. There are a few classes in retrospect that maybe I wish I had taken, but I'm still doing it without having taken those classes. So art schools are, kind of a community, or sometimes communities, kind of an organization, a beast of their own, really, and what they are. And the best students probably transcend the school and get supported and challenged by the school.
Yeah.
As opposed to just doing this work. And that's how the museum school used to be oriented. just in terms of it was an art school.
Yeah.
And there really aren't really art schools anymore. So I'm allowed to say that.
In what sense?
Like when I first went to the museum school, most people in the school were in what was called a diploma program. It wasn't a BA or a BFA program. You got a diploma. And that's what artists basically did. If you wanted to be an artist, you went to an art school. If you wanted to teach art, you would then get a graduate degree.
Okay.
But now it's like if you want to show in a gallery, you have to have a master's degree.
Yeah.
But then there was a real clear distinction. If you want to teach at university level or any level, you get a master's degree. If you just want to be an artist, you go to an art school where your curriculum is all art, essentially.
Which seems like it makes more sense because they're very different skill sets, very different career paths.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there's a lot of overlap for a lot of working artists that teach as well, you don't necessarily need to have one to do the other. So it makes sense that it would be taught more as like sort of a trade or something like working with your hands more than focusing on the academics if that's not what you're going to be using.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the academics are important in terms of thinking and learning. You can't learn too much to be an artist. But when you're in school, you don't necessarily know what you will end up wanting to have known.
That's true.
And so that's kind of a tough one. I mean, Frank Stella said, people shouldn't go to art schools. They should just get liberal arts degrees and learn all this stuff and make stuff.
Yeah.
And well, I'm not quite to that extreme. I think there's a real point to that. I mean, growing your mind is just as important as learning how to handle a camera or a paintbrush or a video.
Yeah.
What do you make of that? That kind of like unwritten expectation that someone should have a master's if they want to have their work in galleries and museums and whatnot.
I think it's sad, honestly. And that's purely because I came up in a different kind of time. I don't think there's anything wrong with graduate school, but I think it's sad that it's become a requirement and the next step is the PhD. And like, do you really need a PhD in studio art?
Do people do that? I didn't even know about that.
That's what's on the pipeline right now. I mean, there's only a handful of schools that offer PhDs in studio art, and there are growing numbers, small numbers of professors that have PhDs now.
Yeah.
I think education is great. So I'm probably sounding wrong. I think education is really important, but do we really need these credentials to be committed to what we're doing? And I don't know.
Right.
It does place barriers because it's not so easy to get a PhD. Even if you have the dedication to the academics, there's a lot of other ways that's not the easiest thing to obtain. So it's not great when, not that art itself is inaccessible, but recognition and a career path in the arts are made inaccessible by that requirement.
It's kind of funny too because there's also a lot of people who will tell you that you should go to school or higher education, not even just because of the skills that you will learn there, but because of the network you will build as well. So I feel like that's such a strange belief when you factor that into how it's like informally required.
Yeah, I mean the networking is important, and it's some people are really good at that. Some people are really shy, and so that's a plus, you could say, is you can begin networking in art school, and some people start showing, and I kind of started showing right out of school.
Yeah.
But it was a different kind of, and also when I started showing was a time in Boston, and I don't know if this even still exists, where a lot of Boston art galleries wanted to show Boston artists. So it was a really good time for me to have left art school, because galleries were really interested in what was going on, and people were supporting Boston artists and buying Boston art in a way that I don't even know if they are now.
Yeah.
Who could say? You mentioned that when you were showing it was different, or you might have said something like that. How do you think it was? In what way did you mean that it was different?
When I graduated school?
Yeah.
Well, just that, as I said, that kind of was a time when a lot of Boston galleries were looking at Boston artists.
Oh, I see. So you mean like different than... I guess I was just wondering if you meant like the galleries themselves were like a different type.
Well,
or...
they probably were. I mean, I feel like it's a whole different experience now, even though I'm not sure I'm so versed in what that experience is to get a gallery.
Were you showing up with like a book of slides?
A book of
you know?
slides. Yeah, yeah.
Or the ones that are like encased in paper in a small image that you put
I've got
into
those.
a...
I could show you some of my slides.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so I have my slides. I show at Gallery Naga, and I've been with them since mid-'80s.
Really?
Oh, wonderful.
We interviewed an artist named Brian McFarland
Yeah.
who has his work in there.
Yeah, and he's showing a lot more regularly. I haven't had a show at Naga for, I don't even know when. Turn of this, could it be 20 years?
Wow.
I don't think it's that. I don't want it to be that long.
Right.
And Naga was very good about showing some of my explicit work, and the prints that I was doing, the abstract work.
Wow.
And they were very, I mean, I didn't sell a whole lot, but they were very good about it. And then, I mean, I still have a piece in a show here and there. They still have my work at the gallery.
Yeah.
But in the early mid-'80s, I got into Naga. And it was a co-op gallery at the time.
Oh, wow.
That's its origin.
What exactly did that mean?
Well, you know, Kingston Gallery and Bromfield Gallery are co-op galleries.
Okay, I'm familiar with them, but I don't
Galatea,
really... Okay.
Co-op gallery. So it was basically an artist-owned and run. We didn't own the space. We leased the space.
Yeah.
Artist-run space, and then at some point, and this is before I got there, they hired a director. So there was always a director when I got there, who was hired. Arthur Dion was the director then. He's still involved, but just a little bit.
Yeah.
I got voted in by the community, and I was like, this is great.
What do you think the kind of like landscape of these artists was when you first joined them? Were they like a lot of younger people? Were they your age? Were they?
Oh, it was pretty.
Was it a really diverse group?
It was not a diverse group.
Oh, I see.
Age-wise, maybe it was, in that I was right out of school, and there were faculty members from the museum school who were showing there. I'm trying to remember who I was showing. So there was an age range,
Yeah.
for sure, but I don't know if there was anyone of color showing then. I wasn't the only gay artist in the gallery. But I'm trying to remember if there were more than two. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting. And that's such an it's cool to imagine, because now, knowing about Naga Gallery, you might imagine that it's just one more gallery in the Back Bay, neighboring ones such as the Copley Society, who is like this very, very old, proper, buttoned up place. It's kind of cool to imagine what that must have felt, that dynamic was like with this very old, respected place with this kind of new co-op. Kind of like, I feel like maybe a lot of people don't realize that they could, because of the proximity to these other
so
kind
do
of
you
fancy
see
places.
Naga in the same kind of plate as Child's Gallery and the Copley Society?
The Copley Society, I think I probably have like complicated opinions on. I don't think any of them are bad. I think it's wonderful to get art out there and have these great shows, but I don't know. I mean, I think that the Copley Society knows what they want. They're looking for a very specific kind of artwork.
Traditional.
To distribute and to promote, and that's okay. There's a space for that, but I personally have only met a few artists that are represented by Naga Gallery and I've never been in it.
You've never been there?
Yeah, I just know a few artists from there.
And have you never been there because it's on Newbury Street as opposed to in SOA? Or have you just never been there because there's never been a show that someone said, hey, you should really see this show?
See, I guess my experience with going to art shows a lot is either a large group show with a bunch of people I know in a gallery, or it's in like some random rented industrial space.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I typically don't have any peers that are having big solo shows in galleries on Newbury Street. I don't know anybody personally that has any shows in that area.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really just a social thing. I mean, I've often heard like, oh, there's like this great show at this place, and maybe I'll check it out if I'm in the area. But I tend to end up at, and Theo probably has a similar answer, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But I tend to just end up at shows that I suppose I have a social
Mm-hmm.
connection to in some way.
Yeah.
Do you go to First Fridays and so on?
I don't go every time, but I've definitely been a good amount of times. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So I've met some really wonderful. We've interviewed random people that we've met there, going into their studios. So
This is a little more arbitrary too, but the parking is a lot harder in Newbury Street.
that's a big thing too. Yeah.
We both live on the South Shore, so we usually
Oh,
are attached
really?
to a car when we come up here. So
Attached to a car.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a little easier to dip into SOA.
Yeah, it is.
But
It
yeah.
is.
So yeah, but I feel like there's this kind of it begs the question of like, are galleries like that, you know, attracting people or something that aren't in, like, you know, there's this, I feel like a only partially true common sentiment that like galleries in the art world are for just rich people and pretentious, whatever, this and that.
Yeah.
And sure, yeah, there's a lot of that, whatever, but I think that a lot of people accidentally associate, they loop everybody in unfairly, where I'm sure like there's a lot of excellent galleries run by great people representing great artists, but I think maybe, I don't know, like, do you think that that's true, that maybe those galleries get represented unfairly as being kind of irrelevant? Or
I don't think of galleries as irrelevant.
Yeah.
But there's so many kinds of galleries from,
Yeah.
from you know, shows that your friends put together to places like Gagosian and Hauser and
Yeah.
Wirth, that are really putting on museum quality shows every month or so.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think, in what you said, that the problem is that people make an assumption that they can't afford to buy art, no matter what league, financial area they're in. And so you see people spending more money on framed posters than they could buy a piece of art from someone local
yeah.
at Open
That's true.
Studios from.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, you know, oh, you can go to Gagosian and buy anything you want. Obviously, you can't.
Yeah.
They're not even going to tell you the price. But you can buy art from people who in Open Studios, from people online.
Yeah.
And that most people just assume that art is something that one can't afford.
Yeah.
I can spend this going out for dinner. I can spend this on new clothes, but that they're used to.
Yeah, and fashion is a really good comparison, because you have this like high-end runway show outfit that might be $10,000 a piece, but on the other side you could buy art from, or buy clothes with artwork on them from a local designer for an affordable price, and people don't think much about doing that.
Yeah.
That's much more common than buying a painting, unless you're in the wheelhouse already.
That's right. I think also people are not confident about their own taste in artwork. That they think they have to know more than they do.
Yeah.
where do you think that comes from? What the hell is that?
I don't know. That's a really good question. It's a really good question. I mean, I went to art school, so, you know, and I've been looking at art and making art for decades and decades. But other people don't have they may enjoy art, but they don't really, I mean, okay, the example for me is I love going to jazz. I don't know jazz. I couldn't talk about contemporary jazz.
Yeah.
But we go. My boyfriend does. He could have that conversation. He's an artist as well, Mark, your uncle. But I'll just go and I have a great time, but I don't really know what I'm listening to.
Yeah.
It's like, and the same would be if I went to sports. I mean, I don't follow any sports. I know there's 2 teams for most of them, but I certainly wouldn't know the players. And
me neither.
and I think that some people feel that way about our work. That it's something above their heads.
Yeah.
Or that it's just something that you enjoy, but don't think about.
That's interesting. Because if you enjoy it, that should be the only requirement to participating,
And yet with artwork, you can participate in so many ways.
Yeah.
You can, whether it's just a beautifully painted landscape or a really esoteric piece of conceptual art. More people are going to kind of get the landscape because they can identify it as that's a tree.
Yeah.
That's easy. But when you start kind of tweaking the thought process and looking at it as something you want to think about as well as something you want to look at, I think people will just shake their heads.
Yeah.
What is that from? I don't know. Well, actually, you know what it's from. It's from art being devalued in schools from when you were a kid. That art is only in activity, and that and once you go past the Impressionists, teachers kind of go like this.
Yeah.
And that says a lot to students. I don't know if that's what's going on now, but there aren't a lot of art programs in grade schools and high schools.
That's an interesting point, the idea that art is framed as only an activity. Because I think there's a lot of programs, like maybe for younger kids, that are like, let's do arts and crafts, but the conceptual piece of it isn't really taught most of the time, at least in like the high school level.
Yeah.
Which those people that decide to go into art school are the few that it reached before that time, which would be through that avenue. So that is interesting.
And I think, and I don't want to kind of just cast aspersions, but I think a lot of art teachers kind of throw up their hands when it gets to pieces that they don't understand, rather than saying, I don't really understand this work. They just kind of like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
And they kind of generate that. And art in this culture in the United States is not really valued, and that happens for kids that they're not taught it as a value. They're taught it as an activity. I think it's a great activity, but they're not taught it as a value as much as gym or academics.
Yeah. That is interesting, because it's also not really valued very much as a career path. Like, that's something that I heard a lot when I was in high school of, like, it's really cool that you can do that, but, like, is that going to be your job, basically? And I didn't know until college and a little after college that there are so many different career fields that were options to me, even until I was already in the job field. Like arts administration jobs or working in the gallery sector, anything like that, I didn't even know existed until I'd already finished college.
Wow.
So
I kind of knew some of that. I knew. I don't know how much I knew about that really when I was in college. I certainly knew about galleries, but I don't know if I thought much about jobs. I also always wanted to teach, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So,
What made you want to teach?
I don't know.
Just always?
I mean, when I was a child, I hated school. So why did I want to teach?
Yeah.
And you could say, well, I admired the teachers, but I didn't. I'd have an occasional teacher I admired. So I don't know why I always knew that I wanted to teach.
Maybe do a better job.
I don't know that I ever thought that way.
Yeah.
I don't know that I took it as a challenge. It's kind of like, I don't know.
I've always felt like there are people that are just born communicators. Like there are people that just like know how to put things into words to help people, to help people learn. And I feel like that's like, maybe I suppose maybe we're a born communicator in a sense. I don't know.
Well, I think art's about communication. Certainly talking is about communication.
Yeah.
But I think art, and I often teach it, is about communication with each other, but also with oneself. You learn things about yourself through the kinds of things you make and images you make and even colors you use.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier too, like I'm interested to hear your take on this, is the idea that art was just an activity or a lot in schools. I'm kind of wondering, like, how would you put into words what it could be instead of just an activity?
It's a really tough one because I respect the activity of making art, but I don't think. But our children in schools who aren't natural drawers, who always get admired because they draw a likeness or a horse so well, are they taught that it's about communication, or they can be.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure that. I guess in my high school, when I went to a private school, it was really respected. And I guess that's what kind of changed. And also looking in the last 2 years of college, looking at colleges, last 2 years of high school, looking at colleges, had to make some decisions about what I would do.
Yeah.
And I didn't choose, I mean, I chose NYU, but I was an art major one semester and then not the second semester. It was kind of like this open, non-major.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a create your own, there was a school that you could create your own curriculum from.
Oh, cool.
Which was essentially like what museum school was.
It's like Montessori for adult artists.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But it would be interesting that if early on people who are attracted to making art were encouraged not just to do more, but to think about it and learn about it, and embraced it.
Yeah.
I feel another thing too is that I've found with my own art is that when I talk about it with people a lot, I found in the past, or very recently actually, or throughout most of my life, if someone asks about a specific piece, my reflex is to tell them technical information about it.
Sure.
Like, I used this and that, and blah, blah, blah. But recently I decided to try to push myself to stop being a chicken about it, just say what I meant. Like, I was feeling this and thinking about this part of my life or whatever, which is something I do in my own head, but I just started trying to put it out there more, and people respond to it way more.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just because I'm being earnest and that people are drawn to sincerity in a way, or if it's just technical information's boring.
Well,
I don't know.
Some people love technical information.
Yeah, sure.
Some people in any field, that's what they're drawn to. But I think the heart of art making for so many people is that it expresses your experience, whether it's an abstract piece or an explicit piece, that it's talking about your experience. And I think when you talk about your experience, others listen more.
Yeah.
Something I used to tell young students when they would say, I show my work to my parents and they're spending all this money, and what are you doing? And I would say, tell them how much it means to you.
Wow.
Rather than try to get them to understand what you're doing, because that's not their. I mean, in most cases, it's not.
Yeah.
What they have this information, and they didn't have this background of valuing it.
Yeah.
But let them know that it means a lot, and that what you're learning is so important.
That's true. It's interesting too, because when you talk to someone about technical aspects of creating a piece, you're talking to a specific group of people that maybe are artists themselves, work in that medium, or are intrigued by it. Like, you're talking to creators or potential creators. But when you're talking about your feelings behind it or what you're trying to express, you're talking to just another human. Like, it's just a person that can relate, which is a much wider pool.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know if this should be part of our talk, but my brother, who's no longer around, did what my father did.
Yeah.
And when my brother had cancer, this is weird to say it like this, he was always kind of fascinated by the medical tests that he would get. He would talk to the technicians, and I kind of thought, maybe this is what he should have done. I mean, he was always into details and minutia, which is all technical. These tests were all of it. I thought, maybe this is what he should have done, is something like this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was never a question that he wasn't going to go into my father's business. He
Yeah.
never had, maybe he loved the idea, but it was never like, here, try these different things out and find yourself.
Yeah.
Is he older or younger?
I'm the youngest.
You're the youngest. And what was your father's business?
Well, it doesn't exist anymore. It was discount stores.
Oh, interesting.
Originally, they were 5 and dime stores, which probably no one even knows that term anymore. And so he had 5 stores in the North Shore, mostly the North Shore area.
I wonder why. Like, was that a bit of a battle for you between going to NYU or going into the store, like into business with your father? Was it a battle for him?
I had no interest in that.
Right.
And well, being an artist was like going to the moon for my parents. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
My father also didn't think the business was big enough to support 2 siblings.
I see.
I mean, he would have been happy if I had joined, and he would have made it work. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, he couldn't have made it work because the business doesn't exist anymore. It's not that kind of business just went down the tubes.
Yeah.
My
Primordial
brother,
Dollar Tree.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Back to that, yeah. And for a while, I was working in ice cream stores and managing them. And this is when I was basically at school.
Yeah.
My father was saying, "You're managing a store? If you're going to manage a store, you should come work for us." Like, no, I think ice cream is a whole different culture. And it's like, but he was serious. Like, you know, if you're going to do this kind of work, and it's like, well, I'm just doing this kind of work right now.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll teach, which of course is what did happen.
Yeah.
But so he was, in his way, supportive. And he didn't know up and down.
Do you see that a lot in your students or your former students? Like, did you ever kind of just watch from afar as like people struggle with coming to terms, or I guess kind of going through that very common battle of like, oh, my dad wants me to take over the business, or like my mom wants me to be a nurse or this or that, but I'm an artist. You know, like, do you feel like that was all of them, or
not all of them? I mean, sometimes their parents were artists.
Yeah, that's true. Right. Can't forget about those folks.
Lucky few.
I remember one review board where a student who's pretty much a musician now, I think, was talking about growing up in the East Village, and the other instructor on this review board was living in the East Village. I was like, I couldn't imagine growing up in the East Village. Oh, that's a great place to bring up a kid. It's like, really? That's so cool. But I didn't have that experience.
Right.
So in some cases, there were definitely those battles. I mean, I know one woman, and I follow her on Instagram now. I don't know really what she's doing, but she was from not just an Orthodox Jewish background, but a specialized Orthodox Jewish background. Her father was a rabbi. And you didn't go to college. You went to a Hebrew school. You went to a yeshiva. You didn't go out into the world. And for her to go to art school was like, and get tattooed and become a dancer and be
It's
really
like cataclysmic.
Yeah, and somehow I think her parents are on board with. I don't know how well they understand it. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But when I talked to her when she was doing it, like, this is amazing that your parents are supporting this. And it's basically against their beliefs, it seems. So it's kind of finding your own beliefs, how you make your own world from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely relate to a lot of those stories because my parents are supportive of me, but my dad's a welder, my mom's a nurse, so like, and they're not artists. Well, my dad's an artist in his own right, but like they're both kind of like, they don't they're not really concerned with what I'm doing on a daily basis, but they have no idea what I'm doing. And they're like, I don't know, like what your goals are even,
They said that to you?
Yeah, but it's, and you know, it's like we have like.
Do you have goals?
Definitely,
Yeah.
yes, a lot. But like, and I'm 27, and so I guess in the grand scheme of things, young. But like I'm way past the point where they would be, you know, helping me apply for this or in my business necessarily. Mm-hmm. So, but they kind of just are like, hey, if you're happy. Mm-hmm. But like, because there was a time also where I really wanted them to get it. I really wanted them to understand, but that, you know, I've since like not really given up on that, but kind of let go in a healthy way of being like, why do I need them to, like, what do I want them to read a bunch of fucking books and think about and philosophically understand, like, you know, that's crazy.
I mean, you want people to support what you do. Whether it's people you're close to or just the world, you want them to like what you do. It's just, the audiences are always slim.
Right.
I had an interesting moment with that. I have a regular day job, like an office job, that supports my art, and I was talking to my parents about it. I know, I'm very happy about it. It was a recent development.
Yeah.
But I was talking to my parents about it, and they asked me, because I got the job like 6 or 7 months ago, and they asked me what my job title was, and like what I do, and I tried to explain it to them, and then I realized it was just, like, it's a very difficult to explain, like, paperworky office job.
Yeah.
And I realized that they had no idea what I was talking about, and I was like, this is the same, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, sure.
Like, they're happy about it, and it's fine, and I don't need to explain it, and it kind of liberated me in my art, too, because I'm like, you know, it's fine.
There are plenty of people who I know that have careers in things that I don't really know what they do.
Yeah,
I mean, I know the field, I've heard of the field, but I don't really know what they do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and it's like, I feel like with art, I always took it so personally of like, I wish that everybody that I loved cared about what I was doing, and it kind of made me realize that even if they care, doesn't mean that they are in that field and know the minutia of what it is, and that's fine. And I don't know what they do either, really.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it's good to talk about that stuff with people.
Yeah.
And let them know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good thought, actually. I really like that, because I don't know, like, my father is a welder, but to what he is doing specifically,
you don't know what he welds.
No fucking idea.
Yeah.
Like, I do, I guess, in essence, but I don't, like, you know, I could definitely not, like, you know, I couldn't, like, recite what he does on a daily basis, or why, or I don't know.
And I grew up on business.
Yeah.
Because my parents, you know, had these stores, and so they were always talking business.
Yeah.
And so I kind of grew up with this kind of business background. I wasn't following it. I wasn't trying to, you know, absorb it, but you couldn't help it.
Yeah.
So I have a sense of, I don't know about now, what it took to run a business or a store and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you think of the work? The drawings or the
I know, we
photographs?
should get into that too.
Yeah. I can show you more photographs if you like to.
Yeah. They're really lovely. I really like the sort of like extremely colorful and very like tactile look of them.
And I like that you say that, because people are tactile.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I kind of want to express, how nice it is to touch a person. And touch, that's a very big part of the photography as well, is this sense of putting your hand on someone.
Yeah.
Whether it's just their arm or shoulder or a very intimate spot.
Yeah.
I had a professor a long time ago that used to tell us all the time that you want the drawing to look like you could put your hand on the person's head, or like kind of.
I like that.
You know,
I like that.
It stayed with me though. So what you're saying really resonates with me as well.
And something that I've told students on occasion in figure drawing is to kind of draw the person as if you were touching them. Kind of similar, because, you know, going around a form is very different from just drawing a line around a form. And sometimes that really works with people. And I'm happy to show you a slideshow of photographs if you want, so you can see kind of the two. Because I've always worked in two different mediums.
Yeah.
This is the first time, the last many years now, that I've worked in two mediums that are really connected, but the work looks completely different.
Yeah, what I really love about the contrast too is that your work is very, you know, it's very electric and expressive, and your photography is very, very representational and very clean. You know, it's very crisp. You know, so I feel like I don't know. Usually, you could, if I saw a show of your drawings and photos, I would think it was two artists.
Sure. And people come in here, open studios.
Oh, who's your studio mate?
Yeah, but also part of that is I also like to show a real range of work at open studios, from old things that I'll get out, and of course my older work is more saleable, so
Yeah.
part of it too. I'm not saying people aren't going to buy these, but people are going to take their children and run.
Right. You mentioned earlier, you made a very good point about how people probably spend more framing a random poster than they would like buying a random painting. I feel like that's like a really good insight, but also I'm curious, are you like constantly in battle with framing prices as well? Because for the viewer at home, this is all paper, all paintings and drawings on large paper. I don't. Well, I guess I'm wondering, like, when you're putting in things in shows or selling things, or like you required a lot to be framing these behind class and like in this.
That was probably more when I was having shows at Nago regularly, and I would have a one-person show every year or two.
Yeah.
And they'd all need to be framed nicely. Now I'm only framing occasionally when something's in an exhibition. So it gets worked. Do you mean budget-wise? It gets worked in budget-wise relatively easily.
I see.
Not necessarily that it's. I would say it gets worked into budget-wise easy.
Yeah, for me, I was involved in a project where I realized about halfway through that everything I was doing would have to be framed for this specific thing, and I ended up scrapping it completely because I was like, I literally can't afford this. So I migrated the entire operation just onto canvas, which I'm familiar with working with anyway. But I was like, if gallery wrapped canvases are acceptable these days, then sorry, paper. I love working on paper a lot.
Saw the Cecily Brown show at the Met a couple days ago, and only 2 of her canvases were framed, probably by the owners of them.
Yeah.
Most of them all of them, I think, were owned by somebody. And her works on paper were framed. There was some in a display case, small piece of sketchbook, but like these canvases weren't framed.
Yeah.
But that was really interesting. There were 2, I think, that were. But that's not really such a big deal. I like getting things framed occasionally.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice.
Yeah, it's very dignified, stately, beautiful.
Yeah.
We'd love to see one of the slideshows, by the way, if you like.
Yeah.
Or we,
I can either bring this laptop over here.
Sure.
Or you can.
Or we could. We'll climb over there.
Over here. I've seen this. So let's just try to.
Oh, thank you.
I'll take the stool, I guess.
And I'm good. I've seen most of this stuff. So we can stop it or just go through it or whatever you want. This is kind of a sort of portfolio. Actually, is the sun too? Is it blocking you?
No,
it's perfect. Yeah.
I think for the listener, we might want to describe a little bit what we're seeing, just so it's not a lull.
So a lot of these are all self-portraits of you with the model.
Yeah.
Shooting with mirrors.
Yeah.
How do you think of mirrors as like a motif in these works?
Well, we look at mirrors every day. I mean, just brushing your teeth or combing your hair, you look at a mirror.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think mirrors are also about looking inside, metaphorically looking inside, and looking at others. And of course, mirrors. Some of these mirrors have frames, like artwork frames. And for me, they're a wonderful kind of tool to kind of break down. I'm looking directly at you, which is the case with this picture. I'm not in it, and that's not in mirrors. Same with that one. That's in his bedroom, their bedroom, and that could be probably anywhere, but it's in the studio without mirrors.
Yeah.
So there's a range, but the mirror is a big metaphor for me. And by putting the mirrors together, like you see over there, where they're kind of overlapping, they're just stored that way at the moment. But they make all these great kind of cuts, and they divide. They can divide the photos, pictures in great ways. So I think about fracturing, and also about cubism, and how we see things. Like this is relatively explicit, but it's all blurred in the mirror.
Also, if this is too personal, absolutely cut me off. But I know you mentioned earlier you're in a relationship, and with a lot of these images dealing so intimately with sexuality, Like, do you also, with these pictures and these series, think about a lot about like monogamy and like kind of polyamorous lifestyle, or the way that people connect romantically with each other?
Well, I think a lot about that. I'm neither monogamous nor polyamorous. Oops, there we go. But I'm really interested in how people create their partnerships, whether it's with a single person, another person, one other person, or not. And so I'm not 100% sure what your question is, I think, but relationship is very important. And sometimes, I'm in relationship with the model in this picture.
Yeah.
He doesn't live in Boston anymore, but I rarely see him. We do communicate somewhat on like Instagram.
Yeah.
And those two guys were not a couple, but they were close friends. Sometimes the guys you'll see in the pictures, this is a couple.
Right.
That's a beautiful photo.
Thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned too in your artist statement on your website that your work also deals a lot with the way, I guess, the LGBT community deals with age, and I'd love to hear you talk about that, because a lot of these models, these aren't all, young people or something. There's a very diverse, lot of different ages and backgrounds.
I think that's really important, and there's a lot of photographers out there, gay photographers, who are shooting pretty young men. I have nothing against pretty young men.
Right, of course.
And but I feel that's a kind of a limitation too.
I see.
And I just want to interrupt myself saying the black guy that we just did, I've worked with him for for 15 years.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I think he was 20 the first shoot, and now he's 35. I'm not 100% sure of the ages. But it's really important to show kind of a range, and not everybody in the pictures are gay or straight or anything, or bisexual. They're all different. But yeah, I just photographed a 90-year-old recently.
Oh, wow.
And Bill is great. And I've actually been working with him on and off since he was a mere 76.
Wow, young and spry.
Yeah, and he loves it. I mean, he's really honored that someone wants to see him naked and be naked in the same room with him. So I think shooting how we age, my body next to a younger person's body, generally, most of the models are younger, not exclusively, so we're about the same age in this picture. I'm older, but not so different. But, Someone asked me on Instagram recently, I don't know who this person is, he has no pictures on his account. He's looking for someone to talk to or exchange photographs with, probably. And it's like, he said something to me about, when I was younger, how much sex did I have? But the way he said it was like, I assume you're not having sex anymore.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's like, well, people are sexual in various ways all their lives.
Yeah.
And why show just a segment of 20-year-olds? I read a photographer's website. He had, I can't remember who it was, had a website where he talked about, they had a section for, people who wanted to model. And he said he was very open to different ages, and anyone under 35 was welcome. Or 18 to 35. Fine.
Oh, I see.
And I was like, that's not a big age range.
It's a small window, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you also mentioned too with your 90-year-old that you shot with. I said that weirdly, but my bad. Like, I'm curious too. You talked about this idea of like, not just people discovering their sexuality and nudity, but also the idea that people want to be naked with them in a sense, and I'm kind of like, these could be mistaken as you shooting a model, but they seem more to me like this is like action shots and dynamic expressions of intimate moments you had with these people. Yeah. You were in a lot of these with them, nude, and experiencing it too. Like, I'm curious how that came to be instead of you just shooting these people. Like, how did that come to be like a kind of an invitation to an experience.
It is different with different models. I'm
Right.
not nude with every model
Uh-huh.
by any means. I would say I'm completely nude with a minority of models.
Yeah.
And so some people, it's more like I'm just shooting them in. But whenever you're working with a model, drawing, photography, anything, there's a relationship that's happening. And you want your model to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And to express themselves. And so I kind of set up a situation where people are very comfortable kind of being themselves.
That's the gift of a good photographer, is being able to work, make somebody feel comfortable and at peace with themselves and safe, That's like I've talked to a lot of photographers, and that's one thing they all bring up, is making the model feel good.
That's really important. So let me.
So I'm assuming, I guess maybe the first few times you did this, it was a brand new experience, but I imagine, or I guess I could just ask, like, do a lot of these people you're shooting with know each other? Like, are they like, oh, like, Robert, does these great shoots, or like, oh, here's what to expect. Like, it's a real exciting, fun time. Or
some of them, yeah, not always.
Right.
For a while, it seemed that way, and I would sometimes be surprised looking at someone on Facebook and saying, "Oh, gee, our mutual friends. I've worked with half of them." Right. and that sometimes was like completely a surprise to me. I didn't even know that they knew people.
Yeah.
But sometimes, yeah. So this is just a folder of the images of Bill at 90.
Wow.
And you don't have to look at them all. I don't know how many's in here, but just it's kind of a selection of my favorites. It's not a narrowed down portfolio of pieces or anything. But yeah, I find models in all kinds of ways. There's not like one route that I kind of do, more and more online. But I just ask people as well, do you want a model? And they say, of course not. Or they say, sure, I'll think about that. And with Bill, he had a visitor, this is like 15 years ago, that was potentially going to model for me.
Yeah. And
he wanted to introduce us. And it wasn't going to work with this other person. But one of the ideas the other person had was, working with another person. I said, well, maybe we could arrange that. And Bill said, kind of jokingly, well, I'll do that. And I said, yeah?
Yeah.
Would you? And he was completely shocked that I took him seriously.
Yeah.
And so we never did work with his friend. That wasn't going to happen. But so it's been great to keep photographing him.
Yeah.
And, we don't think of a 90-year-old playing with himself or having a part on. And of course
they do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think that was why he was shocked that you took him seriously in that? Maybe just the tone of the conversation.
Being 90 means that he's been gay during times where he was, I don't know his whole life story. I wish I knew more of it. Where he was probably a lot in the closet, and nudity isn't big in our culture. It's more and more now, but and so he was just surprised that little part of him would be taken seriously.
That's a really beautiful thing.
And speaking of like a taboo and stuff, have you ever found, like, in your adventures as a photographer doing this kind of work, like, any kind of skepticism or people, or like, I guess because there's a bit of a taboo not just around this kind of work, but also sexual relationships with subjects. People, like, I don't know if, like, I guess, obviously these people are your friends and they're like very intimate, beautiful and fun imagery, but have you ever found that or gotten that kind of criticism, or I guess, like, how do you make, like, sense of all that kind of shit?
It's a really hard one because it's I get kind of criticism, a lot of criticism people have and don't express, of course.
Sure.
But a lot of people would just see this as pornography. I
Right.
mean, they would just see any nude as pornography.
Right, yeah.
And I don't really care about whether they see it that way or not. And I don't care if the work is seen as pornographic because, original porn we look at as art now.
Yeah.
The original,
Right.
daguerreotypes of people naked are hanging in museums. And I can make a distinction between what I'm doing in porn, but I don't care if someone is looking at this to get off on the work or looking at this because they're conceptually invited into it.
Yeah.
But people, certainly don't get it. I expect that with any kind of art that you make.
Right. Do you ever find people are surprised that you were in them as well? It's not just models?
The weirdest thing is I'm surprised that I'm in them. But
Yeah,
I'm surprised at how much reaction those pieces get. And those seem to be the pieces that people are most interested in.
Yeah, they're definitely the most dynamic because something that's like a nude figure, whether it's erotic or not, is something everyone's seen,
Yeah.
despite its beauty. But to see you in there with the camera
Yeah.
gives it a very different narrative,
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, can you tell us about like when you started this series or this type of work, did this like come out of you having intimate experiences with friends and whatever, and then being like, I need to take pictures of this? Or were you shooting models and then you said, hey, why don't I be a part of this too?
Actually, I can kind of pretty easily answer that.
Mm-hmm.
The first involvement I had with models on camera, I would occasionally ask, can I touch your face
Right.
on camera? And my camera's here.
Yeah.
Can I touch your face? And I posted one online many years ago, and someone made a comment, I feel like I'm touching his face.
Wow.
And I thought that was really great. And so it kind of implicated the viewer in their desire.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really wonderful. And it was definitely a kind of period of time between having my hand on his face, on a person's face, then to other parts of one's body, to me being in them. When I started using the mirrors, of course, my reflections were there. So I kind of had to think about that and how they were becoming self-portraits.
Yeah, because they're dealing very intimately with the model, but also with this autobiographical bend
Yeah.
because you are there,
Yeah.
And I like that idea of people feeling like, oh, I feel like I am the one with the camera, because you become this avatar for the viewer as well as a character.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of strange.
Yeah.
A strange viewing experience, really.
I'm always surprised when the people respond to most of the ones that I'm in.
Yeah.
And there was a piece on my Twitter account recently where, what piece was it? And it got so many more likes. It was a piece that I was in. No, it was a piece I did during the pandemic. It was only me. I did a bunch of self-portraits during lockdown because I couldn't work with models.
Right, yeah, limiting.
And so I posted this picture of just me in the mirror with the camera. And it was only head and shoulders. I mean, I was naked, but it was head and shoulders. And it got so many more likes on Twitter than the picture of a really sexy guy with a heart on was right under it.
Right,
It's like,
yeah.
what is going on here? This is just random stuff now.
Right, yeah.
But that's actually I probably did in school.
Yeah, I think that
Self-portrait.
that really makes sense to me, though, because, I mean, like, in terms of, if, it's like, I feel like it could almost be an untrained eye situation where somebody looking at the picture of the sexy guy with the heart on may like it or look for that kind of imagery, but they may not at first glance realize that this is an art piece with a narrative that has been thought about. But with you there, it's like now there's like this sense of drama, and it's kind of bringing them in a little more.
Yeah.
And sometimes we look at art and we want to be there.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful landscape or a communication between two people. That we kind of want to be in those pictures.
Yeah.
And that's something that's kind of interesting about these pieces, especially when you can see the lens of the camera too in the image, where I think not just with photography but portraiture in general, there's sort of a the viewer is kind of put in a position of not necessarily voyeuristic, but it's like your eye is the lens of the image, where the mirror and the camera lens being in the image reflecting out kind of breaks that perception and brings you more into the composition.
Absolutely. It's also kind of somewhat behind the scenes.
Yeah.
There's a sense of, when using a black backdrop, which I also use, it's kind of like that's the picture. It's very formal. But other things, it's kind of like they're seeing the process, which is very important to me.
Yeah.
That art making is a process that can be shared, and I get to see kind of that process as well.
What is the making process for the drawings like compared to the photos? Is it a similar kind of working environment when you're drawing from the model?
Similar and very different at the same time.
Yeah.
In that when I'm drawing, I'm right here and the model's right here, very close, not like conventional drawing group or class. So it's a looser structure. It's a much looser structure. But it's also an opportunity to give a model a place to be themselves, be sexual if they want.
Yeah.
Some of the models I work from also do modeling for drawing classes and stuff like that, where they can't do something like that.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's like giving permission and having permission to kind of do this kind of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And I like that the two groups of work kind of play off of each other. Like this is kind of the irreverent version of the photographs. And the photographs maybe are the opposite of these, but they're also about touch, about vulnerability, about passion, and kind of playfulness.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question? Not really sure.
Who could even say what the question was?
I know, we're vibing right now.
Good.
I'm also curious too,
Perfect.
when you have the models in here, could you tell us about just like the environment? Like, is it, is there like music? Or you guys like having some drinks, some order food and hang out and?
It's different with the drawing and the photography. That I'll offer a model a beer.
Right.
If they want a beer or a coffee or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
And occasionally a drink.
Yeah.
But I might have one, but generally not.
Right.
Almost never, in fact. Never, and I never smoke weed when I have, but hardly ever when I'm photographing.
Right.
It's because there's so much to keep in mind when I'm photographing.
That makes sense.
And I feel like there's something different about the nature of photography and the photographer, having drinks or smoking weed is a different story.
Yeah.
In a way. Where when I'm drawing, we'll hang out. I mean, not every model that I smoke with, but we'll smoke weed. If the model smokes, we'll have a drink or a beer.
Yeah.
And that's much more casual. With both of them, there's some conversation, but it's not a lot of conversation because I'm kind of concentrating.
Yeah.
So some models I talk with extensively, but when you're talking with someone, when you're shooting someone who's talking, they're moving.
Yeah. Makes it a little harder.
It is much harder, but it's a very different environment for the photography and the drawing for the model, but it's a pretty fun one.
Yeah.
I would say. So it's interesting. We don't have to look at these, but this is just random.
This is the camera roll.
This is just what's on. And this isn't even the computer. This is kind of an interim computer. I've replaced this computer. My studio computer has kind of died, and I haven't replaced it yet. So I'm using my home replaced laptop, and so there's strange stuff on it. Anything could come up, but there's a lot of artwork on there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is really wonderful work. I'm really glad that we got a chance to come see everything in person too. This has been great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And these are kind of the most recent development any of my work, these little black and white photographs.
Yeah.
Kind of arranged in this grid format. Could you tell us about like what, like, is this going to be like matted on this?
No. I mean,
Here?
I haven't thought about how they would be shown, quite honestly. And these are digital photographs, but I've always enjoyed little Polaroid photographs, and I've taken a lot, not recently, but of little Polaroid black and white photographs. And I was going through a set recently that from 25 years ago of little black and whites. Actually, I was taking pictures of my sister's apartment, and really liked this intimate format of those pictures. And I thought, why don't I just print some that are small? I mean, you think of big digital print, even something like that isn't that big, but it's big print. It's like, well, what happens if I make these little guys black and white?
Yeah.
And I shoot black. I have a good digital older point and shoot camera that I have set to black and white that I use when I'm shooting. And I'm very sort of careless with it. I don't really like go. I just kind of shoot. I use it as more of a point and shoot than it sort of is. And I'm really liking that you can hold these pictures and look at them closely.
Yeah.
And they have a different feeling than looking at something on a computer screen. So I don't know. I mean, I would not mat them, put them out, frame them this way. But I really haven't thought about it. And I have, on occasion over the years, printed out little photographs and framed them. But there's something about them. I'd almost rather show them like this or in a case.
Yeah.
I think.
I think like 2 by 3 inches, maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. I noticed too that a lot of these have imagery in the background or in the foreground of like little statues or other photographs or other portraits.
This stuff over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the set.
This is, so usually these mirrors, when I'm shooting, are over here.
Yeah.
And this slowly changes. And this isn't really arranged in a very particular order.
Yeah.
So this is a David I got in Italy. This follows in Italy.
Oh, I love that.
And
echoes
he's
of
been
that
showing up.
classical,
Yeah, exactly.
Did you shoot a lot of Davids, right?
Do I shoot? I actually have a picture of a friend of mine, and his arm is that pose. It's just amazing.
Wow.
That's great.
And the mirror is cutting it off so it becomes a separate image. And I do reference, not usually intentionally, but reference master paintings and sculptures.
I mean, how could they not with such a deep, attention to anatomy and the figure, So of course that would come up in, an artist like your work,
Absolutely.
focusing on the body.
Absolutely. So this changes over time. This changes over time too.
Right. The city's landscape.
And so, like, of course, it's Sunday, but it used to be that this lot during the week was packed full.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, it was empty. There was one car that was there for a long time. And they were doing some construction under there. You can see the lines where there was construction.
Yeah.
And they actually fenced around that car.
Oh, because it just
I don't know
stayed.
that it was abandoned, but it wasn't being used.
Right, that person probably had a weird day going to drive their car.
So the parking lot can often be in the background, and the next step is going to be 3 buildings out here, and so they'll end up in the background.
Yeah.
They're building right here?
Well, they will be.
Oh.
They will be.
Wow.
There's going to be three buildings slated for them.
Wow, I wonder what they will be.
Condos,
Living
lab space,
lab space.
some artist space.
Wow.
That's good.
Quite
Cool.
a bit of artist space, and regular offices and retail,
Yeah.
that kind of
And the growth of the seaport.
thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So this stuff is all kind of important. Bill, who's 90, brought these with him. He always brings something to shoot with.
Oh, that's fun.
Wow.
And they kind of show up randomly and meaningfully to me in the work. Even though I also shoot against this, where it's more stark and more formal.
Right. More of a studio vibe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Black background.
Yep. And occasionally over here with the white, even though I don't shoot that much with the white, a little bit.
Right.
A little bit.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I anticipated that this would be an interesting conversation, but I didn't have any idea what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very,
Yeah.
I feel like I've learned a lot, and I don't know.
Thank you.
It's
Yeah.
really wonderful
Thank
to get to know your
Sure.
work and to get to know you.
Sure.
So do you list yourself as Robert Siegelman or as Bob?
In print, Robert. You can call me
Gotcha.
anything.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But professionally, it's kind of Robert, and people do call me Robert.
Mm.
Often Bob. Yeah.
Yeah.
Either one is good.
How long have you been in this studio?
Been in this studio about 15 years.
Wow.
I was around the corner on Melcher Street
Yeah.
for about 18 years.
Is this a live workspace too?
I don't live here, but it is.
Oh wow, cool.
I live in JP.
Oh, JP.
and
How do you
about-
like JP?
What's that?
How do you like JP?
Oh, I love it.
Really?
I love
Yeah.
it. I've been there for a long time.
Mm.
About half the artists. This building is all artists.
Right,
And about
yeah.
half the artists live here.
Mm.
JP is great. It's changed a lot in the last
Mm.
decades.
A lot of artists there too, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm.
Do you live alone?
No, I live with my partner.
Oh right, yeah.
And the kind of odd piece here is, so I own a 2-family house with my ex.
Oh, I see.
And he's on one side and we're on the other side.
Right.
And the three of us are kind of a family.
Oh, that's
Right.
nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
and,
really nice.
And when we weren't when we were in a relationship, we both lived in a separate unit,
Yeah.
Oh.
which had some really ideal qualities.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And then when it came time, we broke up and all
Yeah.
that horrible stuff.
Yeah.
And then I met Mark, and eventually he moved in. And it's like, well, let's see. And
Here we are.
there's some real pluses and there's tensions, like any family member there's
Sure.
tensions with.
Yeah.
I just found out yesterday. Do you know the artist Milton Resnick or Pat Pasloff?
I don't think so.
They're both.
Familiar.
Neither of them are alive anymore.
Oh, I see.
But there's the Milton Resnick and Pat Pasloff Foundation in New York, which I went to for the first time yesterday. There's an exhibit of abstract painting, the feminine in abstraction. There were male and female, and presumably non-binary artists, and I don't know that. But the Milton Resnick Foundation is what I was really interested in. So he bought, in the 70s, a small abandoned synagogue,
Oh, wow.
which he turned into his. It's about the size of a row house. It's not like a synagogue. It's
Yeah.
really
Right, yeah.
small. And he bought it in the 70s and turned it into his work and live space. His wife bought one around the corner as well. This used to be a Jewish area, Hester Street. You've probably heard about this. And it's mostly part of Chinatown now.
Wow.
And his wife bought a synagogue around the corner and lived and worked there. They're both artists.
You said
Yeah.
this was New York?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was in New York
Yeah,
just
yeah.
a couple days ago.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Wow. And it was really great to kind of see this. And I guess their estate sold hers so that they
Oh.
could renovate his into a kind of small museum space. They have curated shows and shows of their work.
Wow.
And there's one little space that hasn't been touched
Yeah.
since when he was elderly and working.
Oh, that's lovely. So
Yeah.
you can see his setup.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see the acrylics.
Wow.
So it was really cool to see that their relationship wasn't so different
Yeah.
than mine and Stephen's relationship was. They lived separately, worked separately. So my ex
Yeah.
has a studio in this building. Mark's studio is in the South End.
In SOA.
Yeah.
Oh,
wonderful.
excellent.
Yeah, you should check him out. He's on the 3rd floor, first Fridays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's Mark's last name again?
Mark Yonkel.
Okay. Perfect.
This is a reproduction. This is one of his pieces. This is actual size.
Beautiful.
Oh, wonderful.
Is that an acrylic painting?
No, it's a collage.
Oh.
And actually, this is another piece. But what's really cool about this is,
Is he a professor there as well?
no, he was a student.
Oh, okay, cool.
And we met. He was never really a student of mine. I was on a review board of his once. That's actually how we met. And then
Gotcha.
Decade later, kind of reconnected. We were kind of friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is actual size. This is actual size. There's no type. This is on the plastic here.
Yeah.
There's no type for the music in here. There's a
Ah.
separate sheet that lists the information, and they really respected his work.
So this is a vinyl record that he did the art for.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And is this his music or for?
No, it's Franz Laureate. I don't know much about Franz Laureate.
Okay.
But
it's beautiful art.
yeah, it's really incredible.
Works really well. I immediately thought, oh, that looks like album art, because I thought you were showing us a
Well, he's
like
using
a print, but
he's making collages on album sleeves.
Oh, so it started on album sleeve.
Yeah.
That's fun. Oh, you can see the wrinkling in the corner. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's really nice that
Yeah.
they left
Very
the text
clever.
off too. That's not common when you do album art.
Yeah. And so these were pre-existing. He didn't do them for the album.
Yeah.
But they chose them
That's lovely.
and made this really nice piece.
Mm-hmm. It's really nice when you have that sort of exchange of respect with a business and art piece.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's not the case, so.
You know, as an artist that's been, living in this city and for a long time, owning your place in JP and being in this building and right around the corner for so long, what do you make of Boston as a home for artists? Like, do you feel like it's kind of like a great place to be an artist, or do you feel like it's kind of
There's so many answers to that.
Yeah. Because asking you is somebody who
moved
said
to
it.
Brooklyn?
Right. What's that?
Aren't you supposed to move to Brooklyn?
Right. They say that, I guess.
It used to be you'd move to New York, but
Yeah.
now you
Yeah.
move to Brooklyn.
It seems like you've had a really good go of it, though.
I've had a really
You have a
good-
great life.
I'm very lucky and very privileged along with that. And there are certainly times where, what if I had moved to New York? And what if I had explored those opportunities? Someone, this came out of a conversation that I had with someone, that they said in Boston you could be a big fish in a small pond, but in New York there's sharks.
Right.
And
Yeah, I suppose so.
yeah. And so I'm very comfortable and very pleased, but what would have happened? Who knows
Yeah.
what would have happened? Would I have just had to, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've been kind of created this great life that, looking back especially, it works, it still works. But I certainly wonder what would have happened. What would have happened if we didn't buy a house in JP? 40 years ago. 40 years ago in a couple months. What would have happened if we... My dream fantasy, alternative fantasy, is my grandmother had a condominium on East 57th Street in New York.
Wow.
And when she sold it towards the end of her life, no one was living in New York. People were leaving New York. She couldn't sell it.
Oh,
wow.
And she ended up selling it for, I don't really remember.
Like $80,000 or
Or
something.
less.
Yeah.
Or
Wow.
less. And she didn't make any money. She lived there,
Unbelievable.
but she didn't make any profit selling it.
Yeah.
She started off, I think she started off over $100,000.
Oh man.
So it was a,
Holy shit.
and then ended up at like 30, something like
It's
that.
highway robbery.
I'm not even sure it was 80. I don't really remember. I always thought, what if I had ended up with that apartment? I mean, no one offered it to me. No one,
Right,
it was
yeah.
never in the cards.
Yeah.
If I had ended up with an apartment on 57th Street.
Yeah, that'd be something.
Yeah, what would my life have looked like? How would have I managed that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you're...
I was pretty young. I mean, I was
Yeah.
in my early 20s, I bet. Mid 20s when she moved out of it.
Do you consider yourself like an ambitious go-getter kind of person?
I'm ambitious in terms of making stuff. Always making stuff. I apply for a lot of shows. In a way, I feel like, what am I missing? How do I get people to see my work who could make better, more important connections? And is that even possible in my age?
Yeah.
Because my track record is for sales is not particularly great. I mean, I sell my work sometimes, but it's not like I can say, look at what I've done in terms of the commercial aspect. And yet, a lot of people would be jealous of what I've done.
Yeah.
So, and I've had some good people interested in the work from time to time, and keeping my fingers crossed. But so I spend a lot of time applying to shows and reaching out, but I always feel like I'm doing it a little bit in the dark. There was back when we used to use slides, someone had said to me once, I feel like I might as well just throw these in the Charles River, these slides in the river, and I have just as much chance of getting this grant as if I mailed them off. And it feels like that a lot.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty. So I think Boston's good for artists, but most people are gonna move to Brooklyn. I mean, the problem is some of those people are gonna end up spending all their time working to maintain that life.
Yeah, that's true.
And not making.
It's a gamble moving out there.
Yeah. So Boston's a really great place to make art. Studio space is really hard to come by, much more than it used to be.
Yeah.
Nobody lives illegally in their studios anymore, which was, Mark was before he lived in my place with me.
Yeah.
He was living illegally.
If you can get away with it.
I don't think anyone's even trying these days.
Yeah.
I don't think it's.
Yeah, I feel like the stakes are so high because, like, I feel like.
Sit down too.
Oh, sure.
The sun here.
Yeah.
The sun might be over here too now.
I suspect it has something to do with the tightening of fire codes.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that's true.
Yeah, it's doing a lot of things.
Right, like
Yeah.
people,
If you want some of this munch on.
Oh, thank you.
I think I'd probably get sick, but
Oh, no.
yeah, it seems like a lot of people. Yeah, not to get too dark, I guess, but
Go ahead.
yeah, people. I guess there's of course the famous. I believe it happened in the late '80s, early '90s, the Rhode Island Great White Club fire that happened.
Oh, yeah.
Or in more recent history, I think in 2017, 18 or something, there was the ghost ship in Oakland, California, which was another warehouse, tragic event. But I think,
And in Boston, the piano craft
Oh, I don't know about that.
was, there's probably some parts here I'm not remembering about that point, but that was an old, the piano craft building.
I don't.
Where the
actually.
piano craft gallery is.
Oh, Theo knows.
Near Mass Ave.
Yeah.
Right off of Mass Ave, is it on Tremont Street? Right off of Mass Ave. That was a rundown old warehouse, piano factory
Yeah.
at one time. And I was actually visiting a friend in Illinois and saw on the news it burning down.
Oh, wow.
What
And
year
now,
was that?
it was in the 70s.
Oh, wow. yeah.
And there were a lot of artists that lost a lot of work.
Oh.
I don't think anybody was hurt.
Yeah, that's good.
And then that building was renovated into, originally artist studios. Now you could happen to get a place there if you, as an artist, but it's not an artist studio
Yeah.
building.
Mhm.
They do have a gallery. It's not an artist studio building anymore. So that happened in Boston too.
That would
Yeah.
be devastating, losing your whole collection in a fire.
Yeah.
One thing I used to talk to about people is, where's your smoke detector?
Yeah.
You're living here legally, and you're not worrying about all this stuff, but I have smoke detectors.
Yeah.
But where's your smoke detector? Where's your fire extinguisher?
Yeah.
That, living here legally is great. I love it. I think it's great you're doing this. And putting together your kind of hidden kitchen and all that. But
Yeah.
you still need.
Make sure you're safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a good point.
Yeah. In fact, I gave someone a smoke detector as a studio warming present. It's like, hey, you need this.
Oh. Oh, man.
Yeah, it's funny how times change in that way, because did you feel like in the 70s or 80s that studio space was abundant in Boston? Like it was just like you could just fall right into a studio?
I don't know if I ever thought of it as abundant, because if you were getting a studio, it wasn't all that hard. It wasn't necessarily easy, but it wasn't all that hard. Because there were all these empty buildings that, landlords wanted people in for
Yeah.
nothing, for cheap, because they couldn't rent them for any other use at this point.
Right.
At that point. My first studio was around, well, not exactly around the corner, but it was on Summer Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sharing it with a friend of mine, and we were paying, I think, it wasn't a studio of this size at all. It was very small. Like the window
Right.
halfway
Nice
out here
slice of the room.
was like $40.
Wow.
And we found out that we were paying for the floor. Not just our studio, we were paying for, and it's like, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, we're paying $20 each. Actually, I was paying less because I was using less of the studio. I was paying
Oh my
15
gosh.
and she was paying 25, I think.
That's crazy.
And it's like when she found out that we were paying for the whole floor, it's like, it was just like a joke. Like,
Yeah.
what are you going to say?
Yeah.
You can't ask for anything cheaper.
Wow. Now if you found a place for $1,500, it would be crazy. That's
Yeah.
wild.
Isn't it? So it's really sad, the lack of studio space here. It was abundant. This area was all artists
Yeah.
for a long time. And there's still artists here.
Yeah.
But there are so many artists down
Mm.
here. And that kind of vibe is really sad to have missing. And people going to New York because they might find studio space easier than here.
Which you would never think that it would be easier in New York City than it is here, but yeah.
Expensive.
Mm.
And I don't really know what people do.
Yeah.
It's so amazing. I think more and more people work out of their apartments
Yeah.
Yep.
in various ways.
Home studios.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Wow.
I'm running low on battery.
You want a charger? Is that an iPhone?
It is.
It's all good. I think I'm good, but yeah, I don't know, man. I think this is like I was saying before. I never know what we're walking into, but this has
Yeah.
been educational, entertaining, and insightful.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I kind of want to find out what this is all about. I don't
Yeah,
really
sure.
know
Absolutely,
exactly what
yeah.
you're doing. But
Excellent.
I think it's actually really important to talk to artists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's great you're doing this.
Thank
I don't
you.
know much about what you're doing, which I'm a little embarrassed about.
That's
No,
okay.
it's totally okay. I mean, we really the whole idea was that we are always talking about art and this and that, and we're like, why don't we just record it? Fuck it. And then that turned into, why don't we just talk to our friends and interview artists? And it's like, I don't even know really what we're doing, but we're just kind of amassing a catalog of artist interviews.
Yeah.
I don't know, and people can do it with it what they please.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We're happy to give artists an opportunity to put their thoughts in a public forum, and then they can use that for whatever they want, or just entertainment for random people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
So do you
I don't
have
know.
post this on a website?
yeah. So it goes on our website, but it's also distributed to Spotify and Apple Music and all the
YouTube.
random shit like that.
Yeah.
Really?
So yeah, it's all internet based. So
Yeah. We've been going for about 2.5 years now.
come up
I don't know
on
how
to
many
the-
episodes we have at this point. Over 100.
That's great.
Yeah, like 112.
Half of
That's
those are
great.
probably
So you've known a lot of artists then.
Yeah.
probably like maybe 60 or 70 interviews.
Yeah, so it's like
That's
it could
great.
even be half and half, because a lot of the episodes also don't have a guest. It's just commentary
Yeah.
of us.
Oh,
Just
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
talking about whatever.
So do you guys know Jerry Russo?
I don't think
Not
so.
familiar.
The name does sound kind of familiar, but I don't know him
Um,
personally.
He's an artist that's been in Boston forever.
Yeah.
And he's been doing it. I think he may be finished for this project.
Yeah.
But he has photographed artists in their studios, Boston artists in their studios.
Oh, wow.
It's not just Boston, mostly Boston, but Massachusetts and
Yeah.
occasionally
Cool.
further than that. And he has his whole collection of artists in their studios, like
Wow.
hundreds.
That's
probably.
amazing.
So he knows so many artists.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have to write that down. That'd be a
Yeah.
cool person
He
to,
lives
to
up
talk to.
He's really would be good to talk to. He was
Yeah.
up in Gloucester. He just moved to Gloucester like
Gloucester.
a couple months ago.
Excellent.
He's amazing. So will you edit this or put it in as is or?
Like kind of both. I mean, occasionally we might chop one up, or if I don't know, somebody revealed their address by accident or something. I don't know. Like there's sometimes we cut something out, but it's really we put on some little intro jingle and an outro, and then it goes up.
Yeah, we tried not to edit as much as we can, or like keep it as raw as we can, so that we don't put any kind of spin on what the person's trying to say.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Originally we didn't edit at all, but then it sounded terrible. So
So
upgraded a little bit.
Yeah.
Minimal editing, but the editing really only happens if someone says, "Oh shit, I told this super embarrassing story," or "My girlfriend's mad at me because I said this," or something.
We could have gone there.
Right. So that happens, but it's not always. Yeah.
So do people listen to it? I mean, I don't know how long we've been talking for.
Almost 2 hours, actually.
Will people listen to it 2 hour?
Some people.
There's an audience for long format shit like this. I mean, it's like, I feel like it's, sure, the world is like, entertainment is built on really fast flash stuff, but there's a lot of people who will sit down and listen to something or watch something in the background that's I mean, people will listen to public radio for like 5 hours straight, and they're not necessarily completely like keyed in and taking notes the whole time, but they're like, it's there.
What we found too is it's a nice intersection, because we get a lot of artists that are working or something and they'll listen while they do that. So
that's nice.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a certain kind of person.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, we're building it. It's not like, it's definitely a small niche group of like consistent listeners, but it, we're trying to build it. So I don't know.
So going to the website, you could see the list of different artists?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be just on a regular website, or for people that use whatever
streaming
platform. Like, do you have like Apple Music on your phone or something, or Spotify that you use for music?
I have a Spotify account. I don't really use it.
You can stream it right from our website too.
I still have it. CDs.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, this would be a little long for a compact disc, but
So would I be able to get a link that I could push
this
on?
We could send you just the link to how you can play it on our website if you want.
Yeah.
Or YouTube. It'll be on YouTube too, I think.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
So it'd be great to just kind of give it to people. The link.
Totally.
Yeah. That's the silver lining of it too, is if you wanted to chop it up and use parts of it for social media or something, you could, or if you wanted somebody to listen to, if you were like, I had this conversation, I want you to hear it. We don't do enough of that either, honestly.
Yeah, it's
long format for us.
It's such a rat race, and it's so difficult trying to, it's like what you're talking about, thinking of all these clever, harebrained ways to build shit or to get the work out there. It's all.
I worked with someone
crazy,
once to edit an interview that I did.
Yeah.
I did an interview with someone who modeled for me and was a student at the school about, and it's really a sad story, about his girlfriend's abortion when they were 16.
Oh, wow.
He didn't even have a license. He couldn't even drive her there.
Yeah.
And how it was legal abortion.
Yeah.
But it was just such a hard experience for them.
Yeah. So young.
And he was really a kid. I think he was 15 or 16. She was around the same age. He may have been a touch older, but not much.
Yeah.
And I said, he was just telling me this. I said, I would love to record this. I've never done anything with it.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Especially with video, like the, audio and visual storytelling is like so compelling for a lot of people. The only problem is it's takes like a lot of computing power to process video.
Yeah.
This is easy. Like, I'll be able to throw this on my computer and it'll be no problem. But with videos, it's like hours and hours of upload time and editing, and you literally need extra like physical shit. Like, it's like a big investment. Video is hard, but it's possible, and it's very, very rewarding. And you can carry around your equipment in your pocket with
Yes.
It's kind of. So, are you both queer artists? What kind of stuff do you do?
I do everything, but at the core, it's mixed media, drawing and painting, and also I love digital media of all kinds,
and music.
And I singer-songwriter stuff as well.
Really?
And but it's really at the core, it all comes down to just drawing and painting and getting in front of people. I don't know.
In getting the work in front of people?
Yeah, and myself. I'm constantly putting drawing as much attention to myself as possible for some reason.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. What kind of images?
Look at me. What's that?
What kind of image? What kind of content?
Faces. I draw a lot of. I don't do a lot of figurative art, but I do a lot of. It's hard to say. Like, you know, I don't know. Like, this painting, this blue one in the middle. Like, I might make something that looks compositionally similar to that,
Mm-hmm.
or this one of this person with the disc in front of their face.
Yeah.
Compositionally, like, it definitely wouldn't aesthetically look like that, but I'll
Like
just do
shoulders
faces.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like to do mixed media work just as with I try to think of as many random different things to include as I can,
Yeah.
but
That's great.
I don't know. And Theo is an excellent artist as well.
What do you do?
I do a lot of similar stuff. I'm a mixed media artist too. This is the only project I do that is sort of performative in a way. I'm not a performer at all, but I do a lot of administrative stuff. I'm dabbling in curation now, which I really enjoy.
Good.
Yeah, it's been fun. And I do a lot of painting and drawing and some textile work too. It's been my recent focus is embroidery, crochet. I've been trying to dye fabric, which is actually really hard. I haven't succeeded yet.
Mm-hmm.
But things like that and a lot of collage. So
Nice.
yeah.
And particular themes?
Yeah, that's always a hard question to answer for me, but what I originally went to school for was art therapy, and I
wow.
actually dropped out of school, but I think I carried a lot of that into my work in the sense that I kind of create a lot of really busy images that don't necessarily have one particular subject to kind of explore a certain feeling or concept, and then just kind of make these large pieces that are kind of working through something versus saying something specific. Yeah, and a lot of my pieces are about gender expression, and queerness too.
Excellent.
So,
A
yeah.
lot of people getting eaten by bugs.
Yes, I use
and
bugs
plants.
a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I haven't actually purchased any in a while, but
Purchased any bugs?
yes, yeah, that was a thing during the pandemic. I don't know if it was the best money move on my part, but I spent a lot of my unemployment money during COVID on Facebook Marketplace collage materials, and I found this group where you could purchase dead insects from like all over the world. So I bought a bunch of them and cast them in resin and attached them to canvases and plates and incorporated them into sculpture and stuff.
Very
So
cool.
yeah, and I ran out of them, so now I just draw them.
That's great.
Yeah, I use a lot of natural elements like leaves, flowers, a lot of sort of fall, winter imagery, I guess. But that's in my embroidery, collage, everything.
That's great.
So, yeah.
You mentioned performance.
Mhm.
We didn't talk about this, and we don't need to, but I think of the photography
Yeah.
and working with a model, especially when I'm in front of the camera too,
Mhm.
as a performative aspect
Interesting.
of the work.
Yeah.
The same way that some painters paint in a very performative kind of way. I mean, the classic
Yeah.
is Jackson Pollock, probably.
Mm-hmm.
That he wasn't. There are films of him painting, but he wasn't doing that. I mean, that term wasn't even applicable.
Yeah.
But I see this as kind of a performative situation where,
Yeah.
in a recorded document of it.
Mm.
I don't know. I was gonna say this earlier, but I could totally see your photographic work translating to video as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I think a lot of people. What I was imagining was kind of like ambient videos of like just settings and sound and feeling and texture.
Mm.
I could see. You know what I could see you doing is collaborating with your models and you, with maybe music and with a cinematographer, and with I think with you and your models and camera, a cinematographer, and some type of ambient musician or a jazz artist even. Who the hell? Who knows?
Bring it full
What
circle.
that could be. You know, it could definitely be something. Or another random idea.
Yeah.
You could potentially integrate interviewing into, like, you could do these. What's that?
Oh,
Yeah, like
so-
Yeah.
like, you know, the photographs or videos or documenting like this person, you know, this intimate experience with the person, with maybe, I don't know, who they are and what they're doing or what they're thinking about
Yeah,
I don't know.
The story I just told you about this guy and his girlfriend and their abortion, he actually told me that during a shoot.
Really?
Oh, wow.
And it was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And then I said, can you come back? Can we record this? And an idea that I had was to do like a slideshow of the shoot
Mm-hmm.
with this story. I mean, this shoot wasn't like the story, at all.
Yeah.
But having those two very different things together.
Mm.
You mentioned that there's kind of like conversation and drinks and this vibe happening during the shoots.
No drinks during the shoot.
Oh, okay. Right, of course.
Model might have a drink.
Sure.
I'm not.
I guess I'm curious. I'm wondering what it would be like if you could create a kind of fly on the wall experience, where you maybe even hired a kind of silent cameraman to be behind you, so that it's not necessarily the viewer imagining being you, but now we have another layer of perspective where they're watching you be you with this other person, and everyone's.
And of course, they'd be in the work too because of the mirrors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they did the camera, the fucking the cinematography.
I like that, but how does this third person work with us too?
I suppose it would be. I think
So it would have to be a really good chemistry.
Yeah, it would have to either be somebody who maybe was sharing the intimate moment with you guys, or somebody who was just very professional and silent and there that everyone was comfortable with.
Yeah.
Could be something like that, I imagine. But I guess, you wouldn't want to introduce some sterile element that kind of fucked up the feeling.
I would definitely find out if it was
just
someone
some
I've
guy.
worked with before.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
The first time.
But yeah, I think a lot of people would watch that.
Yeah.
That would probably be a very exciting and different thing. And, you could easily get around censorship stuff by hosting it on your own website.
Yeah,
Or on,
that's true.
I think there's a lot of, like Vimeo, for example, if you're familiar. I think you could put nudity on Vimeo.
Can you
if I'm
on
not
YouTube?
mistaken. Not on YouTube, unfortunately.
Really?
They're very,
I didn't think about that.
it's very sterilized on you. Like, you can't do anything sexual or... Yeah, it's pretty... You'd probably be censored on a platform like that, but you definitely could... I think you could definitely create some interesting stuff in that. I don't know. It's limitless.
Yeah, it is.
You could do it. You could do it. Whatever. I guess.
I guess what I'm waiting for is someone like what you just said, and then said, and I could do this with you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I would, but I the biggest limitation I would have is that I think that the equipment required for that, like, would be. I think something like that. It would be a shame if it was just done with some shitty camcorder. But I think if it was like beautifully lit and with a real camera and with a cinematographer with a good eye for it, I think maybe, I don't know, maybe you could find somebody that you trust and rent a camera. I don't know, but
Well, I'd have to rent the person with it.
perhaps, yeah. Unless they were some type of participating creative force. Maybe maybe you have a friend that would be happy to do that. I don't know.
I don't know. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And this isn't exactly video, but I love the idea of slideshows. And
Yeah.
during my open studios, my computer that just died had a big screen, and I would put it right here, and just do an ongoing slideshow for the 2 days. Just
Wow.
and random slideshow of the shoots. And so they would be pieces that one would never show in an exhibit.
Yeah.
And I love that they just come up as random.
Yeah.
Great pieces, just crazy pieces, technically terrible pieces. Lots of movement. Everything comes up.
Yeah.
Randomly. And I really like that idea. I would love to do like an installation of screens, all showing kind of random.
Yeah. That would be cool.
Random images from this.
Right, like the ICA, we saw a show one time that the content wasn't related at all, but it was like 9 giant screens in a black room, and you just walked around.
Oh, I don't know how you
It's
pronounce
Ragnar
his
Kjartansson?
name. Does that how you pronounce it?
Icelandic music.
Oh, that was wonderful. I saw
Yeah,
it
that
twice,
blew
I
our
think.
fucking
Maybe more
mind.
than twice.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, the ICA owns that or co-owns that.
Oh, really?
Really?
That
Yeah.
piece
I
of
mean, I think
music.
there's probably an edition of them. I think
Yeah.
they own it with a museum in Canada. I'm
Oh.
not sure. That's an amazing piece, and his work is pretty amazing. And I've
Yeah.
seen some short pieces by him, like single screen,
Yeah.
couple minutes, as well as these mammoth.
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah, we made a
yeah.
whole episode about that. That was a really impactful exhibition for us.
Mm.
So,
That was a while ago now.
yeah.
Yeah, they showed it, I think, right after they reopened.
I think
the
so.
Pandemic.
Yeah.
We
And
saw
then
it.
several years before on its regular schedule.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and so I've seen
Jeez.
it from start to finish at least twice.
Wow. I hope they do it again.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I could see having that kind of format,
Yeah,
but with
right.
just random pieces coming out
Yeah.
Yeah.
of my work.
Right. Yeah, wow.
So,
What an experience.
yeah. But
Yeah,
that takes a lot more technical knowledge and
Right.
money,
Mm.
and I'd rather just do this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same story for us. It's like it would be wonderful. It would be nice, but it is a big. It's a big leap
Mm.
with equipment and with processing.
Yeah.
And with the gallery, trying to find a
With
place to put
gallery.
it on is so difficult.
Yeah, then,
Sure.
then
Yeah.
you get that problem. So.
Sure.
But who could
Yeah.
say? I don't know. Yeah. Anything's possible. So.
Yeah, oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And one thing that I'll kind of add is that I don't know how many years ago, but I would never have guessed that I would have had a wall full of artwork that looks like this.
Yeah.
Never would have
Yeah.
guessed that I'd be doing this.
Right.
And so I don't know what I'll be doing in so many years. And,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
I would love to think it's something that I can't predict.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
have a lot of experience drawing figures, but never expected something like this to come out of me.
Yeah, I had this friend for a while who would always say that he never has the same year twice.
Yeah.
Or that's like his philosophy, that he tries to make sure each year is like some unforeseen experience.
That's nice.
In a good way, obviously.
Yeah.
You don't want to
Yeah.
have some catastrophic whatever. Kind of a funny thought. But yeah, I love that idea, because I feel like that the fact that you didn't expect that and that happens and here you are, you were open before you did that. You were open to that experience and it came to you somehow.
Yeah.
So
One of the things that I questioned, a model in the drawing group that I started off in was a model that I'd actually photographed before, and he was a regular figure drawing model.
Mm.
And I was the only guy in the group, and he said to me, "So you're drawing with the ladies now?" Really interesting statement. And it stayed with me, obviously, because this was quite a while ago. And I thought, so I shouldn't make ladylike drawings. I'm not sure that they were all making ladylike drawings.
Yeah.
A couple of them maybe, but there was really quite a range of what people were doing. It was like, that really stayed with me. What does that mean, to make a ladylike drawing and to subvert that?
Mm.
So that was a real kind of wonderful trigger for me. Like, what does that statement mean? He was just making a joke.
right.
Yeah.
And of course, eventually I had to leave. I mean, the group actually disbanded too, but I
Right.
had to leave the group and hire models on my own to get really
Yeah.
what I wanted to do.
Mm.
But for years, it's like just go in once a week and just put on cool music. And I was in charge
Wow.
of music for a while.
I know some ladies that would consider that ladylike art, like you do now.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How so?
Definitely a lot of ladies that would like it. So
How so?
I just think I've met a lot of women or just people in general that are very, sexual fluidity and people being open to
Good.
very, I don't even want to say taboo, but I mean just different shit.
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't know. I think it's kind of, people talk about sexual liberation in the 70s or whatever. Is that when that happened, or was that 60s? I don't know.
Both.
Yeah, so
It kind of,
I feel like
the
right now
starting
it could
point
be
is
another.
considered when the contraception pill became available.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
kind of the
Oh,
birth.
that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
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 But I feel like today, maybe in more of a sociological way rather than a direct consequence of medical development. I feel like there definitely is a lot of people. I asked you about polyamory and monogamy because that's like a very big lifestyle choice.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people do, where they
Oh, yeah.
are choosing perhaps alternative ways to love or to interact with their with their peers or whatever. So
Absolutely, I think that's
it's
really important.
yeah, it's definitely part of the culture right now.
Yeah.
And as you show through your work, and it's not just young people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's everybody.
Yeah.
It's the world.
And on occasion, I do shoot women. I haven't in quite a while now. It's not like out of the question or anything.
Yeah.
And I shot one woman, and at different times, two of her boyfriends together. And she considered it the beginning of a series, but she moved out of town. Because she said, I'm going to come to town with my boyfriend, you shoot us again. It's like, not again, to her again, that never happened, and I haven't heard from her, but she thought this would be a great idea for a series, her and her various boyfriends. But I really loved, I'm actually not sure the boyfriends did, but I really loved the experience.
Yeah.
And got some pieces that I really like.
Yeah.
No.
And there's been a friend of mine's daughter I worked with. I mean, she's in her 20s.
Yeah.
And that was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we live in a growing world, you know, as you know, is very well, you know, there's all different shades, all different types of people, you know, that like all different stuff.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting too to see like non-monogamous relationships represented in art, because I think more and more there's been kind of, it's Pride Month right now. The MFA had a float at the Pride Parade.
The MFA did?
They did, yeah. Having more queer art is becoming a little bit more common in these gallery spaces, but polyamorous representation isn't necessarily part of that. It's a lot less represented. Like there's layers to that, like what it actually means to show queer art. And there's some groups that are much more depicted than others, not even just in formal spaces. So it's nice to think about art that explores that in a way that is just kind of neutrally presenting it as what it is, you know, or positively presenting it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's really important. I mean, for me, artwork, among other things, is about showing something that's not visible, or that could be visible. And putting stuff out there that we consider, that many people consider private.
Yeah.
And I'm making it public, including my body. I mean, I'm still surprised I'm doing it. And so like I take a deep breath and I push the put it on button. But I think it's really important that, I don't think it's the only thing that art is, but is making something that supposedly private and making it very public.
Yeah.
And letting that transpire in ways that certainly wasn't happening when I was young.
Yeah.
And the term gay art when I was young, not meaning kid, but like in art school, that was kind of like, someone might do that as a hobby. It wasn't something that was serious. And you could probably fill in the blank where I said gay with lots of things.
Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, erotic art, you know, never was taken seriously.
Yeah.
On any level at that time. So how do you take those, what we believe erotic work is, and put it on its head a little bit?
Yeah.
And make fun of it a little bit, and put it out there in a different way. And then Facebook and Instagram takes it down and put it back.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know.
That's why you got to go to gallery shows. Go see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, even then, a lot of galleries aren't going to show this.
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, I've had twice in the past 2 month, had issues with work not being able to hung. And one of them, it's not here to show you. I'll show you my phone, actually. It's one of these pieces, but it's not one that is particularly sexual. I mean, I can't come up with an example exactly on the wall that would fit it. Like maybe it doesn't look like this piece, but maybe something like this. I mean, there is a penis in here.
Yeah.
But I don't see that as being over the top sexual. It wasn't that piece.
but the penis was more or less as understated as
Compared to everything else in here that's tame.
yeah. And it's like, really? I can't put this in?
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's probably just one asshole complaining.
What did they
If I
say
had to
about that?
guess.
Did they specifically
Families.
say?
Oh.
You know, families don't like this stuff. Like, we're a family.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen stuff like this growing up, but
Yeah.
that's usually the homophobic code word. Is
Yeah.
family.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
It's family values.
Family values, and what if a kid sees it? And kids, like, if a kid comes in here right now, they like the color,
Yeah.
they like the energy. My favorite open studios experience with a kid, and some people just drag the kids out of here.
Right.
And some people like, have a look, see what you want. And this one kid, little kid, drags his mother, not to this wall, there's a photograph that he was looking at, it was really low, you could see it, with this guy with a big erection, and he drags his mother over and says, I want a mohawk like that guy has. The erection wasn't part of the conversation at all.
Right.
Yeah.
But the guy had a mohawk, like, I want one of those. And so I said, "Oh."
That's great.
And it's like, that's what kids are looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And it's so funny that, you know, erection is so many people have them.
Yeah.
And yet,
Here we are. Yeah.
they're not supposed to make art about it.
Yeah.
Um,
Which isn't necessarily as true for like someone with like breasts you see in galleries all the time. Like it's not, I don't know. It feels like a very censored body part compared to a lot of others.
yes.
Hmm.
I'm hopefully going to be in a magazine in Brazil, Phalo magazine.
Yeah.
It's doing an issue on anuses.
Excellent.
And I haven't even picked, actually I kind of have picked the work, but I haven't even given it to them yet.
Yeah.
And it's not guaranteed that I'm going to be in it, but I'm, the guy's asking me to
Yeah.
present.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah. I think that's cool. 'Cause
Yeah.
That's almost harder to
Yeah.
show.
Wow.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have those too, more people even.
Yeah.
Yeah. Way more.
Yeah. I used to say, and now I've realized I'm completely wrong, that I used to say that I would hope that there'd be more people running around with penises than guns, and I've been corrected on that there's way more guns than people with penises in this country.
Yeah.
By a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, if you consider just the standard cis male, there's far more guns than there are standard cis males. And that's really scary, I think.
That
Yeah,
is.
that's fucking
Yeah.
You
crazy.
see guns everywhere on TV and
Yeah.
movies, and that we take as normal.
Yeah, that's a good insight.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately,
Thank you
I think
so
we're out of
much.
time. That's
Thank
a great
you so
place to
much.
leave it.
I really appreciate
Yeah.
this. A
Yeah,
lot.
thank you.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
guess we'll, so everybody will know exactly where to go look because we'll link all the shit
Thank
Yeah.
you.
and
Thank
they'll
you.
Enjoy your work.
Thank you. I really
Shut
appreciate
these
it.
off so
Talk to
Colin
you.
doesn't
Yeah,
die.
of course. I'm
Thank
gonna-
you for
Any
coming on.
questions?
Usually we record for about an hour, so
Really?
yeah.
Yeah.
We had a lot to cover today.
Welcome to the catalog of long episodes.
Thank you.
All right, we'll shut them off.
Thank